This is a special presentation of Farm Journal Television.
Welcome to Corn College TV. I'm Clinton Griffiths. Class is in session. Today on Corn College TV, we're going small, micro even, with a big impact. The importance of micronutrients, plus what to watch for at pollination, and tips for productivity, how to carry nitrogen through the growing season. All that and how tillage impacts the perfect stand at planting today on Corn College TV. Thanks for watching Corn College TV. You know, in farming, we focus a lot on the major players in plant growth. We're talking phosphorus and nitrogen, but it's also a good idea to dig a little deeper. In today's systems approach, Ken Ferry shows us how micronutrients play a big role in plant health. Ken, we're always talking about the big idea, the big important parts of the system, but there are some little tiny pieces of the system which we call micronutrients that can be very important to the growth of a plant through the year. True.
The term micronutrient doesn't mean that they're not important, but it does mean that there's such a small amount of them that has to be available for that plant to do what it needs to do. Their jobs are important, just that we don't need the large quantities. You might be putting 1 or 2 or 3 pounds of these on per acre versus the 200 or 300 pounds of something else that you would be applying to the field. Right. But they all play a key role in certain functions within the plant. Typical micronutrient deficiencies have some underlying problem out there. There's usually an excessive amount of a major unit element out there that would cause a micronutrient problem. So excessive amounts of calcium carbonate, for instance, can cause a high pH, can cause a lot of problems out there. Excessive amounts of iron can cause problems out there as well. So usually there's an underlying problem that's going to express that, or soil type. So you see micronutrient deficiencies in your acidic leached sandy soil, or another good common place to see it is in your mucks, your peat soils, the organic soils that can either be high pH or they can be low pH, and you can see the different micronutrients that would show up there. Okay, and we've got some examples here of different types of deficiencies. Yeah. And this first one is boron deficiency, and it's a tough one to pick out. You very seldom would see it this severe in the field itself. We're going to see boron by this, what we call folding on the leaf edge. You can see the folding here on the leaf edge, and light blotches between the veins. So it looks a little bit like gray leaf disease, but it's up in the upper part of the plant, and eventually those veins will come together and start to form streaks. So you'll pick up 2 to 3 inch long streaks within it. You're going to see stacked internodes in there. And then at the bottom of the plant, you're going to start to see edge scorching. So it looks like potassium deficiency, but we're actually scorching the edge of these leaves. Boron plays a big part in water management within this plant. So typically it mimics drought, and you're going to find it in dry years. The drier it is, the harder it is to pick up boron. And there again, if you were following a heavy boron feeder like alfalfa, so if you had a lot of years in alfalfa and weren't putting the boron back, you could have a plant that would show drought stress, but when you dig in the soil, there's no compaction and there's actually some moisture there when we can't get it in. That would be boron. Okay. And what about this one here? This one here would be more in our muck or organic soils. This is a copper deficiency. So you see the blonding out here at the top, and in a situation where this plant is stunted in growth, and chlorophyll production is pretty much shut down. And as it goes on, it'll move from a light yellow to almost a white, and it gets much whiter in this, the plant's going to die. You see the older tissue will, again, start to burn in from the edges and dry up as well. But that distinct color in there tells you that there's no copper involved with it. And you called it blonding? Yeah, kind of a yellowing that would take place in here, and then it'll actually go to white. And this is, as the days go on, this is now starting to turn white. And out in the field, if you saw this, it probably would die in a matter of weeks as far as if we'll get that far. So nothing you can really do to save it at this point? Well, you should have got on it quicker, you know, a situation where you should have been making a foliar application or something like that to bring that back quicker. You wouldn't want it to get that far if you were fighting that. And what about this one? This one is iron, and you can tell iron, again, it's a nutrient that is not mobile, so you're going to see it up here in the newer part of the plant. And one thing about iron is you're going to see striping, pretty distinct from top to bottom, and poor chlorophyll production in here, a little bit of stacking in the internodes. This is going to be in your calcareic soils, and your alkaline soils that have very high pHs and keep the iron fixed in the soil. Doesn't mean there isn't iron in the soil, just that we can't get it into solution to get it into that plant. And here again, iron is not mobile. So if I were to take a foliar feed and treat this plant, all the leaves that are out would receive that iron and respond to it, but the new growth that would come out here would have to be treated again. So maybe multiple applications here to keep this thing intact.
To keep it going. Okay. Overall, big picture on micronutrients, important to watch and pay attention to.
Important to watch, but they're a little trickier because our soil testing techniques for micronutrients aren't that accurate. They're indicators, high, medium, low, more or less. And I like to take the soil test, take the tissue analysis, and then do a visual inspection in the field. And if I see sulfur on the low end or zinc or boron on the low end in my soil test, I see the deficiency visually out in the field, and I see it in a tissue test, then it gives me confidence to put a plan together to try to manage that nutrient deficiency. I'm not as comfortable with trying to do it off a soil test as we would with other nutrients that are out there.
Up next, we're talking pollination, what to expect and what to watch out for. And later, when's the best time to start scouting for disease? We've got the answer in today's Ask the Agronomist. Plus, the tillage impact on planting when Corn College TV returns.
Protect grains from insects with a tank mix of Sentinel insecticide and Diacon IGR. It's complete stored product protection. Stored product pests eat away at profits. Does that eat at you? It doesn't have to. Protect your grain assets with a complete stored product solution. Tank Mix Sentinel insecticide plus Diacon IGR for the quick knockdown of an insecticide with the long-term control of an insect growth regulator. Learn more at bugfreegrains.com or call 800-248-7763. Sentinel insecticide plus Diacon IGR. Complete stored product protection.
Join Farm Journal August 1st and 2nd and take your corn production skills to the next level. Geared for the first-time Corn College attendee, Corn College Fundamentals includes general instructions, breakout sessions in the field, and core knowledge of the systems approach. Join Farm Journal agronomist Missy Bauer at Coldwater, Michigan for this 2-day session providing training to help you advance your corn production skills, increase yields, and improve profitability. Space is limited, so register today at farmjournalcorncollege.com.
Been here at the Chicago Board of Trade for 27 years out of my 31 years in the business. A lot of guys like myself get in here at 6 o'clock in the morning, look what's going on in Asia and Europe. And right here at the Chicago Board of Trade is where all prices for grains and oilseeds are determined for everybody throughout the world. And this is why I'm here. If you have any questions or like to know what I'm talking about, call me.
Farmers Feeding the World is about agriculture coming together to increase both hunger solutions and food production. It's right there, between can and do. Learn more, give generously, dream huge.
Ken, it's a hot time of year, and it's that time of year when we're pollinating this corn. And there's a lot of things that can really fight against us out here in the field.
Yeah, you know, and we always tell our customers, you know, that you got to be there. You got to be there when this event happens. And the neat thing about pollination, you don't have to count heat units, and you don't have to watch the calendar so close. Just watch for the tassel. So when that tassel comes out, it's kind of waving at you, say, I'm going to do something pretty important here in the next week. You probably better be involved. And then we need to follow it through. But we have to make sure that the pollination goes off as smooth as possible. Now, we're awful hot this week, so there's nothing we can do about the weather, but at the same time, you have to make sure that you give it every opportunity you can. This would be the time to be making sure you didn't have silk clippers that are clipping these silks off. So if they're clipping these silks off in hot weather, the silks aren't growing that fast. We're not getting a ½ inch of growth out of them a day in that kind of heat. So as we're dropping pollen every morning, we want every morning to be successful to get this thing pollinated. I want at least a ½ inch of silk. If I get less than a ½ inch of silk across here, then I'm going to be concerned. When I see silk clipping as tight as that, I'm going to take this ear off. I'm going to cut the husk off real easy and open it up and see how many silks fall off. If the silks all fall off, no big deal, you're pollinated. But if the silks don't fall off and you're trying to get pollen dropped, you better get in there and manage those silk clippers quick, because your window of opportunity kind of slips away. Ideal conditions, almost impossible to screw that up as far as the pollination's happening, a heavy pollen drop, heavy silk. When it really comes down to the wire is hot, dry conditions, and you're forcing that plant into an environment it doesn't want to be, and now the pollination window becomes tougher.
Sometimes we get a lot of rain this time of year. Can that affect, being too wet, can that affect us?
Sure can. We're gonna drop pollen mainly in the morning, sometimes in the evening, but mainly in the morning after the moisture draws off the tassel and we start to dry this thing out, then it's gonna open up. If we stay foggy, heavy, and wet, we don't get those pollen drops take place, and the silk's going to keep growing. Okay. One of the indicators would be long silk. So if you're getting about a ½ inch of silk a day and you got 6 inches of silk, of course you went 12 days without getting this thing pollinated, and you're probably going to be in trouble. Most of this has already stopped growing, so we've already achieved pollination here. If we were to open one of these up and shake it off, the silks would all fall off.
Okay, and pollination is vital to our yield at the end of the year.
Yeah, if I come to the field in September and find a field didn't pollinate and the farmer is as shocked as I am, I know I have to work with his scouting capabilities. He should have been worrying about that field through pollination, not just finding it in a September format.
All right, thanks, Kent. When we come back, we've got tips on disease scouting, and later, learn about the importance of carrying nitrogen through the growing season. Plus, digging into tillage tips for better results at planting when Corn College TV continues.
Hi, this is Mark Gold with Top Third Ag Marketing. I have just issued a free workbook on marketing in the top third. This book contains all the major principles from my marketing seminars. And Top Third wants you to try an option at our expense. Included in the book is a coupon good for up to $150 in premium, plus we'll pay the commission and fees. We want you to learn how options can help you become a better marketer. Call 877-TT-HEDGE or visit topthird.com for details.
Rust is destroying your valuable equipment and property. Rust Guy permanently stops rust the easy way. No scraping, grinding, or sandblasting. Brush, spray, or roll Rust Guy onto any rusted metal and it will not rust again. Rust Guy is not a paint, but an industrial strength formula that permanently stops rust. It leaves a slick, rock-hard finish that can be left as is or painted. Rust Guy protects from salt, manure, fertilizer, urine, and rain. Call 888-RUST-GUY to talk to a rust expert or go to rustguy.com.
Take your soybean yields higher by attending Farm Journal Soybean College July 31st. Led by Farm Journal field agronomist Missy Bauer, join us in Coldwater, Michigan and learn how a lot of little things can add up to bushels. The one-day event integrates classroom and in-the-field breakouts, packed with take-home information. Space is limited, so register today or learn more at www.farmjournalcorncollege.com.
Confusion, doubt, fear, forces that drive the markets in unpredictable ways. It would be nice to find a voice you trust, a broker with an impeccable compliance record, someone with global contacts and expertise, a sought-after speaker who simply tells it like it is. All that with 30 years of experience navigating these markets. Someone like that would be quite a find. Bauer Trading. Experience at work for you.
It's time now for our segment where we take questions from our audience. Today our viewers want to know, when do I know it's time to start scouting for disease in my field?
When we're going to start scouting for disease, it's pretty easy as far as on the timing, because usually we can see from a signal from the road. When we see these tassels come out, that's our indication that we got to get out in our fields and be doing some scouting. Okay, we can also pay attention to the weather and what's happening, how humid it is, what kind of rainfall have we been having, in addition to that as well. But once these tassels come out and we start to see silks out here, we want to be doing some of our disease scouting out in the field. So when we head out to the field, we want to make sure we have our safety glasses with us. We want to make sure we've got some sort of a scouting manual, and then also maybe a camera or just our smartphone. So if we see some lesions on here that we're not sure what they are, we can go ahead and take a picture of them and be able to email them out to an agronomist. So some of the diseases we'll want to start looking for, a lot of times something like gray leaf spot, as we can see here, these lesions that have started will be down on the bottom of the plant working its way up. Something else more like common rust, we might see a little bit higher up on the plant. So we'd want to look at some of these upper leaves since that's something that does blow in. So depending on the disease that maybe we're targeting or could potentially be out there, we're going to want to be looking in this lower canopy of the plant as well as this upper. Of course, our goal is to keep from this ear leaf on up clean, because when we go to fill this ear, we're going to take the nutrients from these upper leaves and really put a lot of energy into this ear.
Ken, I think one of the biggest challenges that farmers face is trying to make sure they carry enough nitrogen through the entire growing process. And there are some tools out there that can help us, but boy, can they be confusing.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to manage nitrogen, and you know, we have to think about, though, when we're trying to protect our nitrogen, just what type of inhibitor, if we want to call it, that we're going to use. There's certain inhibitors on the market that stop the volatility of urea. So urea will convert to ammonium and potentially convert to ammonia gas and get away on us. And this is driven by the urease enzyme. And if we want to stop that urease enzyme, we're going to have a urease inhibitor, or we're going to have some type of slow release nitrogen to slow that down. Or we're going to have to rein the nitrogen in or incorporate it. And once the nitrogen's in the soil, we don't have to worry about volatility. But that's quite a bit different than slowing down nitrification. Nitrification is when we go from ammonium to nitrate, and we can protect our soils from leaching or denitrifying with the nitrification inhibitor. Nitrification inhibitors are designed to keep that nitrogen available late in the season. Your urease inhibitors are designed to protect it right now so it doesn't get away on you.
Sure.
I find sometimes growers get those confused. They may put a urease inhibitor on their nitrogen and knife it in the ground and think they're protecting leaching and denitrification later. Or they may put a nitrification inhibitor on the surface and think they're stopping volatility. Gotta think that process through, talk to your agronomist, your salesman, make sure you're putting the right inhibitor in the package to do what you think it's going to do out there in the field.
Right, otherwise we're spending a lot of money and not getting the bang for our buck.
Yeah, we're spending a lot of money not getting the bang for the buck, and if we let this nitrogen get away on us, either in the atmosphere or definitely in the groundwater, we're wasting our money and causing an environmental issue that we really shouldn't be doing.
Right, right, and it starts to show up on our plants too. I mean,
it sure does, and we look at this plant here. Again, we talked about a plant that shows early nitrogen deficiency. That could be not to managing the front end of the nitrogen. These leaves show late nitrogen deficiency. These plants are running out of nitrogen as we speak, and it's going to be very expensive. Corn, we say don't let corn have a bad day. If you're determined as a farmer you got to have some yellow corn, I'd say have it in the beginning and get it back green.
Right.
Corn that turns yellow at this stage is going to be very expensive.
Okay, and it's one of those processes that we have to stay on top of throughout the entire season.
And everybody's farm's different because our nitrogen holding capacity changes within our soil types and what we're working with. So the sandier soils are going to be a lot tougher to work with than some of our silt loams and silty clay loams.
All right, thanks, Ken. Up next, we're headed below ground for above ground results. Tillage that helps the planter when Corn College TV returns.
The potential for great profits and big losses comes at a time of unprecedented market volatility. If you need help managing risk on your farm, turn to a source you can trust. Turn to Bob Utterback. In the business since 1981, Bob works with producers, feed buyers, and speculators all across the country, and he and his staff want to work with you. Call Utterback Marketing Services today to learn how you can build a plan to achieve your marketing objectives for 2011 and beyond.
Stored product pests eat away at profits. Does that eat at you? It doesn't have to. Protect your grain assets with a complete stored product solution. Tank Mix Sentinel insecticide plus Diacon IGR for the quick knockdown of an insecticide with the long-term control of an insect growth regulator. Learn more at bugfreegrains.com or call 800-248-7763. Sentinel insecticide plus Diacon IGR. Complete stored product protection.
Have you missed profit opportunities due to incomplete or outdated market information? Are you keeping up with trends in land values and cash rents? Stay better informed with ProFarmer. ProFarmer goes beyond the everyday market news, digging deeper to help you make great business decisions. This is your opportunity to maximize your success. Visit ProFarmer.com to become a member today.
Some people tend to dream small. Others dream big. But with agriculture's ability to feed the 1 billion hungry people on the planet and a projected global population of 9 billion by the year 2050, it's time to dream huge. Farmers Feeding the World is about agriculture coming together to increase both hunger solutions and food production. Learn more. Give generously. Please dream huge with us.
Finally, good tillage cleans up a lot of residue from this year, but it also prepares a seed bed for next year. In today's Agronomics of Equipment, Missy Bauer tells us how important good tillage can be to getting a good stand next year.
Missy, how can tillage affect a planter's performance?
Well, we do see this happen quite often, that a guy has spent a lot of time working on his planter in the shop in the winter, maybe getting his meters calibrated. This planter is dialed in and ready to go to the field. And he gets out of the field and he plants, and after his crop comes up, he's disappointed in his stand. And a lot of times he wants to go back to that planter and say, what did I do wrong on that planter? When in reality, actually his planter's in pretty good shape.
And below ground, what should we look for?
So what usually happens, we'll find out in the field, is that below ground we had some issues with our primary tillage maybe last fall. So we had come in here and we had ran a tillage tool where you can see where these shanks were, but we didn't get any shattering in between here. So we have what we call these columns that have come up all the way up here to the surface of the soil.
How are we going to be able to adjust the planter settings, maybe even specifically down pressure, to adjust for this?
And that's the problem. That's where the problem lies, is we're going to be trying to plant across this. Think if we were planting into firm soil like this, we'd need quite a bit of down pressure. And then once I get into this looser stuff, I wouldn't need as much. So as we're going across the field, we're not going to be able to handle this firm soil next to this loose soil. So it starts to create a lot of problems for us with the planter.
Well, and what does that do to the seed depth?
Well, usually what we'll see is that as this planter comes up over this column here, it's going to ride out of the ground. And as it pushes up like that, we're going to shallow this planting depth up. If we shallow this planting depth up, then a lot of times we're going to have a plant maybe be a late emerger. He might have to wait for an extra rain to get enough moisture because he's maybe a ½ inch shallower than the rest of these have been planted. So we start to get a lot of this uneven emergence because the planting depth is varied. Maybe here we're 2 inches and here we're 1.5 inches, and we get that variability.
So planting depth is going to be off. What about plant spacing?
Plant spacing is another one. This is one that people don't think about, or it surprises them. They think, well, I calibrated my meters and they're not still being the good spacing I want to see in the field. And we go out here and we find that these columns have almost acted like speed bumps for us, or where we get a lot of planter bounce. So as the planter's running through here, when we've got these columns, this planter's doing this as it's going across and it's bouncing. So we might have metered it perfectly because we had the good meters calibrated, but once it leaves that meter, it's got to go through the seed tube to get to the bottom of that trench. If this planter's back here bouncing over these columns, we're going to get a lot of this seed tube bounce, and it's going to throw our spacing off.
So with a lot of variability in depth and spacing, what's that going to look like when it comes out of the ground?
Well, it's not going to look very uniform, so we're not going to have uniformity out in the field, and it's really going to end up hurting our ear count. So if we don't have this even uniform emergence as well as early growth, we're going to see that we got big plants next to small plants, and we're really going to start to throw our ear count off. So if we start losing 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 ears an acre, it really adds up to a lot of bushels.
And that's going to wrap us up for this week. Remember, if you missed any of the program or would like to share it with friends or family, you can always find it at farmjournalcorncollege.com. Here's what's coming up next week on the show. Coming up next week on Corn College TV, get out the checkbook. Our plants are paying the carbon penalty. Ken Ferry shows us how to adjust. Plus, we'll check stock quality at pollination and utilizing tile gates on the road to implementing drainage management. All that and tips for variable rating nitrogen next week on Corn College TV. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Class dismissed.
Today?
Oh, we've just been kind of out